closely at your life. Not the surface, the inside. How many dreams died because you were too distracted? How many opportunities slipped away because you were too drained? How much of your power was wasted on noise that never mattered? Distractions are not harmless. They are silent thieves. They rob you slowly until nothing is left. But there is a way back. A path stronger than motivation, deeper than discipline, and more transformative than any advice you've heard. It begins with silence. Silence resets you. Silence rebuilds you. Silence reconnects you with who you were meant to be. And today, you will learn how to walk away from every distraction and rebuild a stronger, clearer, unshakable you. 1. The world gets loud when your inner world gets weak. In Buddhism, there is a profound understanding that the world you experience outside is a mirror of the world you carry inside. When your inner world becomes confused, emotional, exhausted, or overwhelmed, suddenly everything around you feels louder, heavier, and more demanding. You begin to notice noise that never bothered you before. The same notifications you once ignored now feel urgent. The same messages you once responded to calmly now drain your energy. Even simple conversations start to feel overwhelming because your inner self has lost its balance. This is not because the world has changed. It is because your inner stability has weakened. When your mind becomes chaotic, it amplifies everything around it. A small problem becomes a crisis. A simple delay becomes a disaster. A harmless comment feels like an attack. The world appears more stressful, but the stress is actually rising from within you. This is why spiritual teachings emphasize that inner peace is not a luxury, it is your foundation. A weak inner world makes every noise sound like thunder, every distraction feel like pressure, and every responsibility feel like a burden. Your soul becomes tired because it is constantly reacting instead of calmly understanding. But here is the truth. The world is not attacking you. Life is not plotting against you. These moments of pressure are signals from your inner self, quietly asking you to return home to slow down, breathe, and realign. The chaos you see outside is a reflection of the imbalance you have been ignoring inside. And the longer you avoid that imbalance, the louder the world becomes. You rebuild your strength, not by fighting every distraction or trying to control every situation, but by creating a calm space within yourself. When your inner world is peaceful, the outer world loses its power to shake you. The same noise that once irritated you becomes something you simply observe. The same distractions that once pulled you in different directions lose their grip. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding wisely. This is why silence is not an escape, it is a reset. Silence is the space where your mind repairs itself, where your thoughts slow down, and where your emotions reorganize. When you spend time in silence, your mind becomes clearer, stronger, and more focused. And when your mind becomes powerful, the distractions of the world become meaningless. They simply fade in importance because they no longer have access to your emotional energy. A strong inner world makes you unshakable. It makes you centered, aware, and calm, even when everything around you is loud. And the stronger your inner world becomes, the less the outer world can disturb you. Instead of being pulled by distractions, you begin to stand firmly in your own presence. You hear the noise, but you are not affected by it. You see the chaos, but you are not swallowed by it. You feel the pressure, but it no longer defines you. Your peace becomes your power, your silence becomes your strength, and your inner world becomes the place where your true life begins. 2. Walk away from noise before it turns into damage. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing they can handle endless noise, endless distractions, and endless emotional pressure without consequences. But the truth is simple. The mind may be powerful, but it is not indestructible. Constant noise weakens your clarity. Constant distractions weaken your discipline. Constant emotional chaos weakens your inner stability. Most people only realize this when the damage has already been done, when their mind feels exhausted, when their thoughts feel heavy, or when their heart feels disconnected from itself. That is why walking away is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of deep inner wisdom. Noise does not always come from the outside world. Noise also comes from people who drain your energy without giving anything meaningful in return. It comes from environments that constantly demand your attention but never feed your soul. It comes from habits that slowly pull you away from your purpose. And it comes from your own untrained mind, which jumps from one distraction to another without ever settling into peace. When you ignore these signs, the noise grows louder. And when the noise grows louder, you begin to lose connection with yourself. Walking away early is a form of self-respect. It is choosing not to wait until you are mentally exhausted before taking a break. It is recognizing that your peace is more valuable than any temporary excitement, approval, or stimulation the world can offer. When you walk away from noise, whether it is a chaotic environment, a draining relationship, or a distracting habit, you are not abandoning your life. You are protecting your energy so you can live it with clarity, purpose, and strength. The damage caused by constant distractions is often subtle. It happens slowly, the same way water slowly carves into stone. A few minutes wasted on meaningless entertainment turns into hours. One unhealthy conversation becomes a pattern. One moment of losing focus becomes a daily habit. Without noticing, you begin to drift away from your goals, your values, and the person you wanted to become. Your life starts moving on autopilot, controlled not by intention, but by distraction. That is the real danger, not the noise itself, but what the noise takes away from you without your awareness. This is why Buddhism teaches the importance of mindful withdrawal. When you sense that something is draining your energy, stealing your focus, or disturbing your inner peace, you step back not because you are fragile, but because you are protecting your inner world. Walking away creates space, and in that space, clarity returns. You begin to see what actually matters and what never deserved your attention in the first place. Some people will misunderstand your silence. Some will think you are distant or cold, but they will not understand that you are choosing a higher path, one where your peace is non-negotiable and your energy is sacred. You are not walking away from them. You are walking toward a stronger, calmer, wiser version of yourself. You are choosing the kind of silence that heals, restores, and elevates your spirit. The earlier you walk away from noise, the more of yourself you save. You protect your creativity, your emotional strength, your mental clarity, and your spiritual balance. You prevent small distractions from growing into deep wounds. You stop the damage before it begins. And most importantly, you give yourself the space to rebuild, not from pressure, but from peace. 3. Silence is where you finally hear your own truth. Most people do not fear the noise of the world. What they truly fear is the noise inside themselves. That is why silence feels uncomfortable at first. When everything around you becomes quiet, you are left alone with your thoughts, your memories, your regrets, and your desires. And for many people, that is exactly what they have been running from. In silence, there is nothing to distract you from the truth of who you are, nothing to cover up the emotional wounds you have ignored, and nothing to hide behind when your heart begins to speak. This is why silence is not just a spiritual practice, it is a mirror that shows you everything you have been avoiding. In Buddhism, silence is considered a form of deep wisdom because it forces the mind to slow down and finally face itself. When you sit in silence, your thoughts begin to rise to the surface. At first, they may be chaotic, anxious, or scattered, but the longer you stay with them, the more they begin to settle, just like muddy water becoming clear when left untouched. In this clarity, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear the voice beneath the noise, the voice of your intuition, The voice that tells you what is right for you, what is wrong for you, what you must walk away from, and what you must rebuild. This inner voice has always been there, but distractions drown it out. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, social media, toxic people, unnecessary conversations, emotional drama, overwhelming responsibilities, your inner truth becomes buried under layers of mental clutter. You start living according to what others expect, what others want, and what others pressure you to become. You forget your own desires. You forget your own needs. You forget the path your soul was quietly guiding you toward. Silence brings you back to that path. When you spend even a small amount of intentional time in silence each day, you begin to understand yourself on a deeper level. You start noticing the emotions that have been silently influencing your decisions. You start recognizing the thoughts that keep repeating in your mind, shaping your behavior without your awareness. You begin to see the people, habits, and environments that drain your energy versus those that nourish your growth. Silence does not give you new answers. It reveals the answers you already had but never noticed. In silence, your wounds speak. They tell you where you need healing. This is why so many people avoid silence. It exposes pain they have worked hard to ignore. But avoiding the wound only makes it grow deeper. Facing it helps it finally heal. Silence reveals the truth behind your fears, the root of your insecurities, and the reason behind your emotional reactions. And once you understand these inner truths, you begin to move through life with greater clarity and strength. Silence also reveals your dreams. When the noise of the world fades, you begin to hear the quiet desires of your heart, the goals you abandoned, the passions you silenced, the dreams you told yourself you didn't deserve. These truths rise gently, reminding you that you are meant for more than surviving distractions. You are meant to grow, evolve, and rise into your highest self. But that transformation only begins when you stop drowning in noise long enough to listen. And perhaps the most powerful part of silence is this: it reconnects you with your spiritual identity. You begin to sense your purpose, your direction, your inner wisdom, and your deeper meaning in life. You stop feeling lost because your soul finally becomes louder than the world. It shows you what you must let go of. It shows you what you must walk toward. It shows you who you were always meant to be. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is full of answers, full of clarity, full of healing, full of strength. It is the space where your mind rests, your heart speaks, and your true self awakens. And when you make silence a part of your life, you begin to move through the world with confidence, direction, and inner peace. You no longer follow noise, you follow truth. 4. Not every distraction is evil, but every distraction has a cost. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is believing that distractions are harmless simply because they are small or common. They think a few minutes on their phone will not change anything. They assume that listening to gossip is just casual entertainment. They believe comparing themselves to others is natural and unavoidable. They treat these distractions like tiny insects, annoying but not dangerous. Yet in reality, these small distractions are like slow, silent leaks in the mind. You don't notice them immediately, but over time they drain your energy, weaken your focus, and scatter your sense of direction. In Buddhism, the mind is seen as a garden. Whatever you allow to grow, whether weeds or flowers, will shape the entire landscape of your life. Distractions are the weeds. They enter quietly and grow slowly. But if you don't remove them early, they spread everywhere. A simple distraction can turn into a habit. A habit can turn into a pattern. A pattern can turn into a lifestyle. And before you realize it, your mind becomes crowded. Your spirit becomes tired, and your sense of purpose becomes lost under the weight of unnecessary noise. Distractions are subtle because they rarely feel harmful in the moment. Scrolling on your phone gives you a small rush. Watching random videos keeps you entertained. Engaging in gossip makes you feel connected to others, but the cost comes afterward when you feel mentally drained, emotionally empty, or spiritually disconnected without understanding why. This is because distractions do not just steal your time, they steal the quality of your attention. And your attention is the foundation of your life. Whatever controls your attention controls your future. Not every distraction is evil, but every distraction demands a piece of your mind. Some distractions take away your focus, others take away your emotional energy. Some take away your creativity, your awareness, or your discipline. Some distractions even take away your ability to hear your own intuition. And when you lose connection with yourself, you begin making decisions that do not align with who you are or where you want to go. You start living unconsciously, reacting to the world instead of creating your own path. The most dangerous part is this: distractions slowly train your mind to seek stimulation instead of depth. You begin to crave quick pleasure instead of meaningful progress. You prefer comfort over growth. You choose what is easy over what is right. Your mind becomes restless, always searching for something new, something exciting, something to escape into. And once your mind becomes addicted to distraction, silence feels uncomfortable, discipline feels boring, and real growth feels too slow. This is how distractions quietly weaken a person's inner strength. But when you begin to notice the cost of distractions, you awaken a new level of awareness. You start seeing what each distraction takes from you, not in terms of minutes or hours, but in terms of clarity, confidence, and peace. You realize that every moment spent on something meaningless is a moment taken away from something meaningful. You begin to choose wisely, protect your mind, and respect your own time. Removing distractions is not about cutting joy out of your life. It is about cutting noise that blocks your growth. It is about removing what drains you so you can make space for what nourishes you. When you let go of distractions, you reclaim your energy. You reclaim your focus. You reclaim your direction. Your mind becomes clearer, your actions become intentional, and your decisions become stronger. Most importantly, removing distractions reconnects you with your true potential. When your mind is no longer scattered, you begin to see yourself more clearly. You reconnect with your goals, your dreams, your inner purpose. You stop settling for less because you finally have the mental space to reach for more. And this shift, this return to yourself, begins with a simple realization. Even harmless distractions have a cost, and your life is too valuable to be paid in fragments. 5. Rebuilding yourself requires a season of isolation. There comes a point in every person's life where growth becomes impossible in the environment they are currently living in. Not because the environment is evil, but because it no longer matches the person they are becoming. This is why every spiritual tradition, especially Buddhism, teaches the importance of stepping away not forever, but long enough for the mind to reset, the heart to heal, and the soul to rediscover its true direction. This period is often called a season of isolation, and it is one of the most powerful experiences a human being can give to themselves. Most people fear being alone because they think isolation means loneliness. But real isolation is not about being cut off from the world. It is about being reconnected with yourself. It is a sacred pause, a cleansing moment where you remove yourself from noise, confusion, and emotional clutter so you can finally see your life clearly. When you constantly surround yourself with people, conversations, responsibilities, and endless distractions, your mind becomes crowded. You absorb the energy of others. You carry their expectations. You become influenced by their opinions. In this state, you are not living your life. You are living a life shaped by everything around you. That is why rebuilding yourself requires you to step back. You need distance to detach from the roles you play, the pressures you feel, and the identities others have placed on you. When you enter a season of isolation, you strip away everything that is not truly you. You begin to understand your real desires, your real fears, your real strengths, and your real weaknesses. You discover the beliefs that have helped you grow and the beliefs that have held you back. You begin to question habits that no longer serve you. You analyze patterns that create unnecessary suffering. This inner work can only happen in silence, away from the noise that keeps you distracted from your own transformation. Isolation gives you something the world cannot offer: clarity without interruption. In this clarity, your emotional wounds rise to the surface, not to hurt you, but to heal you. Your mind slows down long enough for you to understand why you react the way you do. You begin to see the difference between what you actually want and what you have been conditioned to want. You begin to notice the people who genuinely add value to your life and the people who quietly drain your spirit. Without isolation, these truths remain buried under everyday noise. And during this period, something profound happens. Your inner strength returns. You regain control of your mind. You rediscover the discipline you lost. You feel your focus sharpening. You become more intentional with your choices, more protective of your energy, and more honest with yourself about who you are becoming. You stop rushing. You stop seeking approval. You stop trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. The silence transforms you, because, for the first time in a long time, you are not being pulled in 1,000 directions. You are finally centered within yourself. Think of monks who retreat to mountains, forests, or quiet temples for months or even years. They are not running away from the world. They are running toward their higher selves. They understand that true strength is built in silence, not in noise. True clarity comes from stillness, not from chaos. True transformation requires solitude, not constant stimulation. You do not need a monastery or a mountain. You need a conscious decision to create your own sacred space, even if it is just an hour a day where you unplug, sit quietly, and reconnect with your breath. This season of isolation is not punishment. It is preparation. It prepares you for the next stage of your life. It prepares you to handle challenges with greater stability. It prepares you to love without losing yourself. It prepares you to work with discipline, not pressure. It prepares you to walk through the world with a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by anyone or anything. When you come out of this season, you return stronger, calmer, wiser, and more aligned with your purpose. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: isolation teaches you that you never needed the world's noise to feel whole. You never needed constant validation to feel worthy. You never needed endless distractions to feel alive. Everything you were seeking outside was always waiting for you inside. But you could only meet that version of yourself once you stepped into silence long enough for your true self to appear. Rebuilding yourself does not happen by surrounding yourself with more people, more activities, or more stimulation. It happens when you choose less noise, less drama, less distraction, less chaos. In the simplicity of solitude, you rebuild your identity brick by brick. You become intentional, disciplined, emotionally grounded, spiritually aware, and mentally unshakable. And when you finally return to the world, you don't come back as the same person. You come back with a new mind, a new heart, and a new sense of direction. 6. The quieter you become, the more power you gain. Silence is often misunderstood in modern life. People assume that silence is emptiness, weakness, or lack of action. They believe the loudest voice wins, the busiest schedule means success, and constant movement equals progress. But Buddhism teaches a truth that stands in complete opposition to this belief. True power does not come from noise, it comes from stillness. The quieter your mind becomes, the more control you gain over your life. The more control you gain over your inner world, the less the outer world can disturb or influence you. And this inner control is where real strength, real clarity, and real peace begin. Noise does not strengthen you, it weakens you. Every moment spent reacting to noise drains a part of your energy. When your mind is constantly overstimulated by notifications, conversations, responsibilities, comparisons, and mental clutter, it cannot operate at its highest level. Instead of thinking deeply, you think quickly. Instead of choosing wisely, you choose impulsively. Instead of responding with calm, you react with emotion. Your attention becomes scattered, your focus becomes fragile, and your peace becomes unstable. This is what happens when the mind is loud. A loud mind cannot hear its own wisdom. But when you intentionally add moments of silence into your life, an inner transformation begins. The first change you notice is awareness. Suddenly, you begin to see things that were always there but hidden beneath distractions. You start recognizing your emotional triggers, understanding your patterns, and becoming aware of how your thoughts influence your actions. You begin noticing which activities drain your energy and which ones nourish it. You see the difference between real priorities and temporary impulses. Silence brings everything into sharp focus, like clearing fog from a mirror. Awareness leads to discipline. When you become aware of your thoughts, habits, and choices, you naturally begin to take control of them. You stop feeding the habits that damage your mind. You stop entertaining conversations that don't align with your growth. You stop chasing validation because you finally understand that your worth does not live in the eyes of others. It lives in your own self-respect. Silence makes you disciplined, not through force, but through clarity. Discipline becomes natural when you clearly see what helps you and what harms you. Then comes emotional mastery. A quiet mind does not react instantly. It pauses, it observes, it understands before it responds. And in that pause lies immense power. The person who pauses before reacting gains control over their emotions. They gain control over their words. They gain control over their decisions. And ultimately, they gain control over their life. When you are no longer controlled by impulses, anger, fear, or ego, you become unshakable. You stop being a prisoner of external circumstances because your strength now comes from within. As silence deepens, something even more powerful emerges: inner resilience. A quiet mind cannot be easily manipulated. It cannot be easily provoked. It cannot be easily confused or misled. You stop absorbing the energy of people around you. You stop taking things personally. You stop getting stuck in unnecessary drama. You become grounded even when life becomes chaotic. This is the power monks carry within them. It is not magical. It is not unreachable. It is simply the result of protecting their inner silence. And then comes the final transformation: alignment with your higher self. When the mind grows quiet, your intuition becomes louder. You begin to feel a deeper sense of direction, almost like an inner compass, guiding you toward what is meant for you. You instinctively know which paths to avoid, which people to distance yourself from, and which opportunities are aligned with your growth. Your decisions become cleaner, your goals become clearer, and your energy becomes aligned with your purpose. You begin to move through life with a calm confidence that cannot be faked. This is why the quietest people often have the strongest presence. They do not need to shout to be heard. They do not need to prove themselves to anyone. Their silence speaks for them. Their calmness influences others. Their clarity inspires trust. Their energy carries authority without force. This kind of power does not come from dominating others. It comes from mastering oneself. The world teaches you to be loud. Buddhism teaches you to be still. The world pushes you to respond instantly. Buddhism teaches you to pause. The world tells you to keep moving. Buddhism reminds you that stepping back is sometimes the greatest step forward. Noise makes the mind restless. Silence makes the mind wise. And once you taste this inner stillness, this deep, grounded, unshakable silence, you will never want to give it up again. because you will realize that the quietest version of you is also the strongest version of you. The calmest version of you is the most powerful, and the most silent version of you is the most awakened, disciplined, and spiritually aligned. The quieter you become, the more clearly you see yourself. The more clearly you see yourself, the more power you gain. And the more power you gain, the more effortlessly your life begins to fall into place, because you are no longer controlled by the world. You are finally in control of your own mind. 7. When you walk away from distractions, you walk toward your higher self. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize they are no longer growing in the place they are standing. A moment when the noise, the distractions, the people, and even the life they once accepted as normal begins to feel too heavy, too chaotic, too small for the person they are meant to become. This moment is uncomfortable, but it is sacred. It is the turning point of your spiritual evolution. It is the whisper of your higher self calling you forward, asking you to walk away from everything that keeps you stuck in the old version of you. Walking away from distractions is not just about avoiding noise, it is about walking into your true, awakened life. Distractions are not always loud. Many are quiet, subtle, and disguised as comfort, habit, or routine. Staying up late scrolling your phone feels harmless. Spending time with people who drain your spirit feels normal because you've done it for years. Settling for routines that don't inspire you feels safe because it's familiar. But every one of these distractions pulls you away from your potential inch by inch. They steal your time, your focus, your emotional energy, and most importantly, your sense of purpose. And when you lose purpose, you lose yourself. In Buddhism, the greatest suffering comes from living unconsciously, moving through life without awareness, without intention, without a deeper connection to your inner self. Distractions keep you unconscious. They numb you, weaken your discipline, scatter your attention, and prevent you from hearing your own truth. And the tragedy is that most people do not even realize they are drifting away from themselves. They don't see the cost of delays, the damage of emotional noise, or the weight of mental clutter, because it happens slowly, silently, over years. You only wake up when you feel empty, lost, or disconnected, without understanding why. But the why is simple. You have been drowning in distractions for so long that your true self has been buried underneath them. Walking away from distractions is an act of self-liberation. It is a decision to reclaim your energy, your clarity, your peace, and your future. It is not easy, because distractions often come from familiar places. People you know, habits you've built, beliefs you've carried, environments you've accepted. Walking away means breaking the invisible chains that have held your mind captive. It means choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure. It means facing the silence you once feared because you now understand that silence is where your real strength begins. It means saying, I will no longer live on autopilot. I choose a higher path. When you distance yourself from toxic people, your spirit feels lighter. When you stop spending hours consuming meaningless information, your mind becomes sharper. When you limit conversations that drain your energy, you begin to reconnect with your own voice. When you choose intention over impulse, you regain control of your life. These changes are subtle at first, but powerful over time. You start waking up with more clarity. You feel more grounded. You make decisions with confidence instead of confusion. You listen to your intuition without doubting it. You feel a deeper connection to your inner self and to the direction your life is meant to take. Walking away from distractions is not about rejecting the world. It is about choosing yourself. It is about honoring your energy, protecting your mind, and prioritizing your inner peace. When you walk away from noise, you create space. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. You begin to grow. You begin to see possibilities you never saw before because your mind was too cluttered to notice them. You begin to notice your gifts, your passions, your purpose. Ideas flow naturally. Motivation returns. Your heart feels lighter because it is no longer weighed down by unnecessary noise. You begin making choices not from fear or pressure, but from clarity and alignment. And slowly, your higher self begins to reveal itself. This higher self is not a different person. It is the real you, the one buried under years of distraction and external influence. It is the version of you that is calm, disciplined, confident, loving, aware, and deeply connected to inner wisdom. It is the version of you that makes decisions not based on emotion, but based on truth. It is the version of you that does not chase validation. It does not seek approval. It does not lose itself trying to please others. It stands firmly in its identity, its purpose, and its path. This is who you become when you walk away from distractions. In Buddhism, your higher self is often described as your awakened nature, the part of you that understands life, not through noise but through awareness. It sees the world clearly. It sees your place in the world clearly. It sees your suffering, your desires, your attachments, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your potential with complete honesty. But you can only access this awakened nature when you quiet the mind, when you reduce the noise, when you stop feeding distractions that cloud your perception. Walking away also brings a profound emotional transformation. You begin to feel less reactive. Your anger decreases. Your anxiety fades. Your sense of urgency disappears. You no longer rush through life trying to keep up with everyone's expectations. You move with intention, with calmness, with awareness. You start speaking less but feeling more. You observe more but react less. You notice patterns in people and life that you were once too distracted to see. This awareness becomes a superpower. It protects you from manipulation, from emotional entanglement, from self-sabotage. It allows you to navigate life from a place of wisdom instead of impulse. And then comes the most beautiful part. Walking away from distractions upgrades the quality of your entire life. Your relationships become healthier because you are no longer tolerating people who drain or disrespect you. Your decisions become smarter because you are no longer guided by confusion. Your goals become clearer because you finally have mental space to dream again. Your habits become stronger because you now understand what you truly want. You start attracting opportunities that match your energy, not opportunities that match your insecurities. You stop living in survival mode and begin living with purpose. This is why walking away is not losing, it is gaining. You are not abandoning the world. You are abandoning versions of yourself that no longer serve your growth. You are not cutting people off. You are cutting off energies that prevent you from becoming your best self. You are not isolating yourself from life. You are isolating yourself from noise so you can finally live with clarity and intention. The old you lived in distraction. The new you rises in silence. Walking away from distractions is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a life lived with awareness, strength, intention, and inner peace. It is the beginning of becoming someone you and your future self will be proud of. And once you take that step, there is no going back. Because when you walk toward your higher self, you realize that everything you were searching for was always inside you, waiting for you to walk away from the noise long enough to finally find it. 8. Your life changes the moment you choose inner peace over external noise. There comes a moment in a person's journey when they begin to understand a profound truth. Life does not get better when the world becomes easier. Life gets better when the mind becomes quieter. For years, many people chase comfort, validation, success, love, attention, and approval, thinking these things will bring peace. But every one of those pursuits connects you more deeply to the external world, and the external world is unpredictable. It changes, it disappoints, it distracts. It pulls you in 1,000 directions until you no longer know which direction belongs to you. This is why Buddhism teaches that real transformation begins not when the world changes, but when you shift your relationship with the world. And that shift happens the moment you choose inner peace over external noise. Inner peace is not silence from the outside. It is silence from within. It is the ability to remain centered even when life becomes chaotic. It is the strength to stay calm even when emotions rise. It is the clarity to stay focused even when distractions surround you. And most importantly, it is the wisdom to know that your true home is not outside. Your true home is your inner world. When you learn to protect that home, everything in your life begins to shift. Most people spend their entire lives chasing things that steal their peace. They chase people who don't value them. They chase goals that don't fulfill them. They chase habits that drain them. They chase validation from people who don't even know themselves. They try to control situations, control outcomes, control relationships, and control how others see them. And in this endless chase, they exhaust themselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. They wake up tired, go to sleep tired, and spend their days wondering why nothing feels enough. The truth is simple. Nothing feels enough because inner peace has not been chosen yet. Inner peace is a decision, not a destination. It is a commitment to yourself that says, I will no longer allow the world to disturb my inner world. This decision is powerful because it changes the way you respond to everything. When someone disrespects you, you no longer react with anger. You respond with clarity and boundaries. When a situation doesn't go your way, you don't fall apart, you adapt with wisdom. When life becomes uncertain, you don't panic. You stay grounded in the knowledge that your inner strength is greater than external uncertainty. This shift transforms you from a reactive being into a conscious creator of your own emotional experience. The moment you choose inner peace, you stop participating in unnecessary noise. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving energy to conversations that bring negativity into your life. You stop chasing approval because you understand that your worth is not something others give. It is something you affirm within yourself. You stop running behind people who walk away because you realize anyone who disrupts your peace does not deserve access to your presence. This is not arrogance. This is self-respect in its purest form. Choosing inner peace also changes the quality of your decisions. A calm mind makes wise decisions. A chaotic mind makes emotional ones. In silence, your intuition speaks clearly. You feel a natural sense of direction. You recognize opportunities aligned with your purpose and avoid those that are not. You see yourself more honestly. You see others more clearly. You understand what truly matters. And because of this clarity, you stop wasting your life on meaningless pursuits and begin pouring your energy into actions that build your future. Inner peace also changes your relationships. You stop attracting chaos because chaos no longer feels familiar. You start attracting people who value your presence, not just your time or your energy. You begin forming connections built on honesty, respect, and emotional maturity rather than fear, insecurity, or habit. You learn to love without losing yourself. You learn to give without draining yourself. You learn to walk away without feeling guilty. You learn that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary for your spiritual health. And perhaps the most life-changing part of choosing inner peace is this. The world no longer controls you. The comments, opinions, judgments, and behaviors of others stop dictating how you feel. You become emotionally independent. You learn to generate your own calm rather than seeking it from others. You learn to soothe your own wounds rather than expecting others to heal them. You learn to center yourself rather than being pulled by circumstances. This independence gives you a level of inner freedom that most people never experience. Inner peace does not remove challenges from your path. It strengthens you to face them with wisdom instead of fear. It helps you stand tall in moments when others collapse. It allows you to stay grounded when everything seems to fall apart. It helps you see solutions in situations where others only see problems. And it gives you a type of strength that cannot be shaken because it does not come from the world. It comes from the deepest part of your being. And then, slowly, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Once you choose inner peace, outer peace begins to follow. Your life simplifies, your relationships become healthier, your goals become clearer, your daily habits improve, your mind becomes lighter, your heart becomes softer, your intuition becomes louder. Everything that once felt heavy now feels manageable. Everything that once felt confusing now feels purposeful. Everything that once felt beyond your control now feels aligned. Life does not change because you forced it to. Life changes because you changed inwardly. Your vibration changes. Your energy changes. Your presence changes. And because of this shift, the world responds to you differently. You attract peace because you have become peace. You attract clarity because you have become clarity. You attract stability because you have become stable within yourself. This is the power of choosing inner peace over external noise. It transforms your life from the inside out. It turns chaos into clarity. It turns weakness into strength. It turns confusion into wisdom. It turns restlessness into calm. And most importantly, it turns an unconscious life into a conscious, meaningful, spiritually guided journey. Choosing inner peace is choosing yourself. Choosing inner peace is choosing your future. Choosing inner peace is choosing to live, not just exist. 9. Your greatest transformation begins the moment you stop explaining yourself. One of the biggest sources of stress, exhaustion, and emotional imbalance in life is the constant need to explain yourself, your decisions, your silence, your boundaries, your dreams, your changes, your priorities, your lifestyle, your healing, your distance, and even your growth. Without realizing it, many people live their lives in a never-ending performance, trying to prove their worth to those who do not understand them, justify their choices to those who do not support them, or defend their truth to those who are not even listening. This cycle drains emotional strength, destroys inner peace, and keeps the mind trapped in external noise. But Buddhism teaches a powerful truth. The moment you stop explaining yourself, your true transformation begins. Explaining yourself seems harmless. You want others to understand your intentions. You want them to see your heart. You want them to know you mean well. But the reality is that people hear you based on their own level of understanding. A peaceful person hears differently than a troubled person. A healed person hears differently than a wounded person. A wise person hears differently than a confused person. No matter how carefully you explain yourself, people can only meet you at the level of their awareness. And if their awareness is limited, no amount of explanation will ever be enough. When you constantly explain yourself, you give others power over your emotional world. You depend on their understanding to feel secure. You depend on their validation to feel confident. You depend on their approval to feel worthy. And the moment someone disagrees, misunderstands, or criticizes you, your peace collapses. This creates a fragile sense of self, a self that is easily shaken, easily hurt, easily manipulated, and easily exhausted. But when you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim your strength. You stop asking others for permission to be who you are. You stop negotiating your truth. You stop outsourcing your self-worth. There is a deep spiritual shift that happens the moment you decide you no longer owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace, choosing growth, choosing silence, choosing distance, or choosing a new version of yourself. You begin to stand firm in your decisions without seeking approval. You begin to walk away from what disturbs your soul without guilt. You begin to set boundaries without apologizing. And you begin to live life with a deep sense of authenticity that cannot be shaken by opinions. Explaining yourself is often rooted in fear, fear of being judged, rejected, misunderstood, or abandoned. But the truth is, no matter how much you explain, people who want to misunderstand you will still misunderstand you. People who want to judge you will still judge you. People who want to criticize you will still criticize you. And people who are committed to seeing you negatively will twist every explanation into something harmful. This is not your burden to carry. Your purpose is not to educate everyone about your intentions. Your purpose is to live your truth in a way that aligns with your values, your peace, and your spiritual journey. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that says, if you know yourself, you need no explanation. When you have clarity about who you are and why you are doing what you are doing, the noise of others fades. Their words, their doubts, their judgments lose power. You realize that people do not need to understand your path for it to be valid. They do not need to approve your healing for it to be necessary. They do not need to support your growth for it to be real. Your journey is your responsibility, not their responsibility to understand. The moment you stop explaining yourself, your energy shifts. You become more calm, focused, grounded, and self-assured. You begin to conserve emotional energy that was once wasted trying to convince the wrong people. You begin to use that energy to work on your goals, strengthen your mind, deepen your spirituality, and expand your inner peace. You stop reacting emotionally to opinions because your identity no longer depends on them. You stop chasing acceptance because you finally accept yourself. You stop fearing loneliness because you now enjoy your own presence. You stop looking for someone to validate your journey because your soul has become your guide. Not explaining yourself also improves your relationships. Instead of arguments built on defensiveness, you engage from honesty and clarity. Instead of people-pleasing, you set healthy boundaries. Instead of suppressing your needs to maintain harmony, you honor your needs to maintain inner balance. The relationships that truly matter will survive your silence. The ones that fall apart were held together by your emotional labor, not genuine connection. You begin to see who respects your boundaries and who only respected your silence. You begin to see who values your presence and who valued your convenience. This clarity is painful but necessary. It frees you from attachments that were silently damaging your soul. And then something even more powerful happens. Your mind becomes stronger. You no longer get pulled into emotional chaos. You no longer overthink every decision. You no longer replay conversations in your head. You no longer waste hours trying to understand why someone didn't understand you. You let go. You detach. You move on. This mental freedom is the foundation of inner peace. When the mind stops chasing explanations, it returns to stillness. In that stillness, wisdom grows. In that wisdom, healing deepens. And in that healing, transformation begins. When you stop explaining yourself, you allow your actions to speak. You allow your presence to speak. You allow your growth to speak. You let your transformation be the evidence. People may not understand you at first. They may question you, criticize you, doubt you, or resist your changes. But in time, they will see the strength, the clarity, and the peace that arises when someone chooses themselves without apology. And whether they see it or not does not matter, because the true reward of not explaining yourself is not convincing others, it is freeing yourself. Your higher self does not need approval. Your healed self does not need validation. Your awakened self does not need applause. Your peaceful self does not need permission. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop participating in the noise. And when you stop participating in the noise, you rise above it. You become untouchable, unshakable, and deeply aligned with the life you were meant to live. This is where your greatest transformation begins, not when the world understands you, but when you no longer need it to. 10. Your life becomes unstoppable when you learn to move in silence. There is a level in life that most people never reach, not because it is impossible, but because it requires discipline that few are willing to practice, the discipline of moving in silence. In a world that constantly pushes you to share everything, your plans, your progress, your dreams, your achievements, there is something profoundly transformative about choosing silence instead. Moving in silence is not secrecy, it is strength. It is the wisdom to understand that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, your next steps, or your evolution. Silence is protection. Silence is strategy. Silence is spiritual power. Most people speak too soon, reveal too much, or announce things before they are ready. And in doing so, they expose their dreams to criticism, jealousy, doubt, and negative energy. The moment you speak something into the world, it becomes vulnerable not because your dream is weak, but because human nature is unpredictable. Some will support you, but many will not. Some will applaud you, but many will secretly hope you fail. Some will encourage you, but many will question your capability. And while you may be strong enough to ignore their words, your subconscious mind still absorbs their energy. Doubt spreads. Fear grows. Momentum weakens. This is why sacred things must be protected with silence. In Buddhism, silence is not just the absence of noise. Silence is the presence of awareness. It is the space where wisdom forms, where intuition strengthens, where clarity appears, and where the soul finds direction. When you move in silence, you create a sacred boundary around your dreams. You give them time to develop, strengthen, and take root before exposing them to a world that does not always understand or appreciate what you are building. You protect your mind from unnecessary comparison, protect your heart from unnecessary judgment, and protect your path from unnecessary interference. Moving in silence also teaches you to detach from validation. When you stop announcing your progress to others, you stop relying on their praise to feel motivated. Your drive becomes internal, not external. You learn to move because your purpose calls you, not because the world is watching. You begin to develop a deep, unshakable self-motivation. You stop depending on applause to feel worthy, and you stop fearing criticism because no one knows what you are building except you. This independence is freedom. It is the foundation of unstoppable growth. When you move in silence, your life becomes more intentional. You begin to act instead of talk. You develop discipline because you no longer waste time explaining, discussing, or defending your plans. You stop getting distracted by opinions and start focusing on execution. You stop seeking advice from people who don't understand your vision. You stop sharing your steps with people who have never walked your path. Silence removes noise from your life and replaces it with focus. And focus is the bridge between where you are and where you want to go. Silence also protects you from sabotage, both external sabotage and self-sabotage. When others do not know your next move, they cannot interfere with it. They cannot discourage you, distract you, or plant seeds of doubt in your mind. And when you keep your plans private, you also avoid the trap of premature satisfaction. Speaking about your goals can create a false sense of accomplishment. You feel praised before the work is even done, and that praise weakens your hunger. Silence keeps you hungry. Silence keeps you disciplined. Silence keeps you grounded. The moment you begin moving in silence, you notice that your relationships change. You stop sharing intimate details with people who do not value your vulnerability. You stop letting negative or insecure individuals influence your decisions. You create distance from those who gossip, judge, or compete with you. Your circle becomes smaller but profoundly stronger. You surround yourself with people who respect your privacy, who support your growth quietly, who understand your silence as a form of strength. And those who misunderstand your silence were never meant to join you on your higher path. Moving in silence also strengthens your intuition. When the world becomes quiet, your inner guidance becomes louder. You begin to recognize what feels right, not what sounds right. You begin to sense opportunities before they appear. You begin to walk away from danger before it reveals itself. You begin to trust your inner voice more than external noise. And this intuition becomes your greatest teacher, your strongest protection, and your most reliable compass. It leads you to the life that is meant for you, not the life society expects you to live. In silence, your transformation becomes undeniable. People start to notice something different about you, not because you said anything, but because your energy changes, your actions become sharper, your presence becomes stronger. You begin to glow differently. You carry yourself with calm confidence. You move with direction. You make decisions that align with your highest self. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop living in fear. You stop giving the world access to your inner world. That mystery becomes power. That restraint becomes strength. And that inner strength becomes the force that carries you through every challenge without breaking. When you move in silence, success becomes smoother. You avoid unnecessary obstacles created by other people's opinions. You avoid emotional setbacks created by judgment. You avoid losing motivation through comparison. You avoid exposing your weaknesses to those who would use them against you. Silence allows you to grow at your own pace, in your own timing, under your own spiritual alignment. And when your success finally appears, it arrives complete, undeniable, unshakable, and unexplainable. People will wonder how you achieved so much without making noise. They will not understand that silence was your strategy. The truth is simple. Noise creates pressure. Silence creates power. Noise reveals your plans. Silence protects them. Noise scatters your energy. Silence concentrates it. Noise invites interférence. Silence invite blessings. When you learn to move in silence, you stop living for others and begin living for yourself. You stop chasing external reward and begin experiencing internal fulfillment. You stop decorating your path with explanations and begin walking your path without fear. Your life becomes unstoppable when you no longer advertise your next move, when you no longer seek approval, when you no longer explain your growth, when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Your actions become your speech, your discipline becomes your identity, your transformation becomes your proof, and your silence becomes your shield. This is the final stage of spiritual maturity. To live quietly, grow deeply, act intentionally, and rise powerfully without noise, without announcement, without explanation. Because the moment you master silence, the world is no longer your obstacle. The world becomes your stage. 11. You become truly free the moment you stop needing anything from anyone. There is a silent prison that many people live in without ever recognizing its walls. It is not built of stone, metal, or locks. This prison is built from expectations, attachments, dependence, and emotional hunger. It is the prison of needing too much from others, needing their approval, needing their reassurance, needing their presence, needing their attention, needing their validation, needing their agreement, needing their love in a very specific way, needing them to act, speak, or behave in a way that protects your feelings. This invisible reliance keeps millions of people trapped in emotional suffering. They move through life searching for someone to make them feel whole, searching for someone to complete them, searching for someone to fill the emptiness that silence brings. But Buddhist teachings deliver one of the deepest truths. You become truly free the moment you stop needing anything from anyone. This does not mean you stop loving people. It does not mean you isolate yourself or shut your heart down. True freedom is not chosen out of coldness, it is chosen out of wisdom. It means that your emotional balance, your inner peace, your identity, and your sense of purpose are no longer controlled by the actions or inactions of others. It means that you no longer break when people leave, no longer fall apart when people change, and no longer lose yourself trying to keep others close. It means you stop begging for the kind of love you should be giving yourself. You stop expecting others to fill your empty spaces. You stop relying on their presence to feel safe. Instead, you develop an inner stability that no one can take away. The reason many people suffer so deeply is because they tie their happiness to someone else's behavior. When that person acts differently, their mood collapses. When that person becomes distant, their mind becomes anxious. When that person disappoints them, their heart breaks. And because humans are imperfect and ever-changing, anyone who depends on others for emotional fuel lives in constant instability. You cannot control others. You cannot predict them. You cannot hold them tightly enough to guarantee that they will stay the same. When your peace depends on them, peace will always slip through your fingers. The moment you stop needing people to be your source of peace, you reclaim the peace that was always meant to come from within. Freedom begins when you stop asking others to complete you, because you understand you were never incomplete to begin with. You were simply disconnected from yourself. And as long as you believe you need someone else to make you whole, you will live in fear of losing them. Fear becomes your master, and attachment becomes your chain. But when you learn to stand emotionally on your own 2 feet, a remarkable transformation unfolds. You love people more deeply, more honestly, and more peacefully because your love is no longer built on fear. You no longer cling, chase, or beg. You simply love without needing anything in return. This is love without attachment. This is love without desperation. This is love that liberates both you and the other. When you stop needing others, you begin to tune into your own needs with clarity. You begin to understand what truly makes you happy, not what society says you should want, not what friends expect you to want, not what partners push you to want. You begin to rediscover your inner preferences, your natural strengths, your quiet passions, your true desires. You begin to build a life that reflects your soul instead of a life built to impress others. This alignment brings peace, because when you stop performing for the world, you finally begin living for yourself. Letting go of needing others also reveals the truth about people around you. You start seeing who genuinely values you and who only valued your dependence. Some will drift away when you stop needing them because they were only comfortable when you were small, insecure, or reliant on their presence. Others will become closer because they are inspired by your strength, your clarity, and your inner peace. When you no longer need people, you choose them with intention, not desperation. You engage from a place of fullness, not emptiness. You connect because you want to, not because you fear being alone. This shift creates relationships that are healthier, more stable, and more genuine. You no longer tolerate mistreatment because you do not fear losing someone who cannot respect your peace. You no longer swallow your boundaries to keep someone comfortable. You no longer chase people who repeatedly show they are not aligned with your energy. You begin to walk differently, more quietly, more confidently, more selectively. And those who deserve to walk with you will rise to match your energy, not drag you back to their level. But the deepest transformation happens inside you. When you stop needing anything from anyone, you discover how powerful you actually are. You become emotionally self-sufficient. You learn that you can calm your own storms. You can heal your own wounds. You can validate your own feelings. You can build your own happiness. You can choose your own direction. You can generate your own peace without waiting for someone to behave a certain way. This freedom gives birth to a person who is no longer shaken by disappointment, no longer troubled by abandonment, no longer terrified of change, and no longer reactive to the moods of others. You become centered, grounded, and spiritually anchored. Your mind gains clarity because you stop obsessing over people's opinions. Your heart gains strength because it no longer depends on external support. Your soul gains peace because attachment no longer chains it to suffering. And your life gains direction because you stop living for others and begin living for the person you were always meant to become. The world changes completely when you stop needing others. You begin to notice something extraordinary. Life becomes lighter. You begin to breathe again. The pressure disappears. The expectations dissolve. The emotional roller coaster ends. You finally understand the meaning of inner freedom, not the freedom to escape the world, but the freedom to exist in the world without being emotionally controlled by it. And when you reach this level of freedom, you become someone rare, someone who loves without clinging, gives without expecting, helps without resentment, and walks away without fear. You become a soul that is whole within itself. You become a person who brings peace wherever they go, because peace is no longer something you search for, it is something you carry. This is the spiritual liberation Buddhism describes. A heart that is open but not dependent, a mind that is aware but not reactive, a soul that is loving but not attached. And once you taste this freedom, you will never go back to the emotional prison of needing others to define your worth. Because the moment you stop needing anyone, you finally meet the most powerful, peaceful, and awakened version of yourself. 12. Your inner strength expands the moment you stop reacting and start observing. There comes a powerful shift in a person's life when they finally realize that not every situation deserves a reaction, not every comment deserves attention, and not every person deserves access to their emotions. Most people go through life reacting to everything that happens around them, every disappointment, every insult, every inconvenience, every shift in someone else's mood, every unexpected event, every piece of bad news. Their peace rises and falls based on what the world is doing. Their emotions become unstable because they are controlled by stimuli rather than grounded in awareness. But Buddhism reveals a profound truth. Your inner strength expands the moment you stop reacting and start observing. To react is human. To observe is spiritual. Reacting is instinctive, emotional, and impulsive. Observing is conscious, calm, and wise. A reactive mind is like a leaf blown around by the wind, easily moved, easily disturbed, easily exhausted. But an observing mind is like a mountain still, grounded, unshakable even when the storm rages around it. The mountain does not chase the wind. The wind cannot move the mountain. This is what emotional mastery looks like. When you are reactive, you surrender your power without realizing it. A small comment can ruin your whole day. Someone's attitude can influence your self-worth. A sudden inconvenience can trigger anger or frustration. A moment of discomfort can send your mind spiraling into anxiety. You become a puppet controlled by the world. But when you learn to observe instead of react, you take your power back. You become the master of your mind instead of a servant of your emotions. You begin to see things clearly without the fog of ego, fear, or reactivity. Observation creates a pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause, something incredible happens. You gain awareness, you gain clarity, you gain control. You give yourself the time to understand why you feel what you feel, why a situation triggers you, and whether the emotion you are experiencing is coming from truth or from old wounds, old patterns, or old insecurities. Most people think they are reacting to the present moment, but in reality, they are reacting to their past unhealed memories, past betrayals, childhood wounds, unresolved fears. Observation allows the mind to separate reality from emotional residue. As you begin to observe more, life stops feeling like an emergency. You no longer live in constant fight or flight mode. You no longer rush to defend yourself at every misunderstanding. You no longer argue just to protect your pride. You no longer feel the urge to prove someone wrong. You no longer let your emotions drag you into battles that do not contribute to your growth. Instead, you learn to respond with intention, not with impulse. You choose silence, because silence reveals more truth than arguments ever will. Observation also exposes the illusion of control. When you observe life closely, you begin to understand that you cannot control people's actions, you cannot control their perceptions, you cannot control their judgments, and you cannot control the world's unpredictability, but you can control your response. You can control your inner state. You can control the energy you carry. You can control the meaning you assign to each situation. And as this realization deepens, your sense of inner peace expands. You stop taking things personally. You begin to see that most people behave based on their own pain, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own confusion, not because of you. The person who snaps at you may be battling stress you know nothing about. The person who ignores you may be overwhelmed by their own thoughts. The person who criticizes you may be projecting their self-doubt. Observation shows you that other people's behavior is rarely about you. And once you understand this, your emotional world becomes quieter. Observing instead of reacting also strengthens your intuition. You no longer drown in emotional noise, so your inner voice becomes clearer. You start seeing patterns in relationships, patterns in behavior, patterns in your own emotional triggers. You begin to understand when to walk away, when to stay patient, when to speak up, and when silence is the strongest response. Intuition thrives in silence, and silence is created when the mind stops reacting. Over time, you begin to notice that most situations in life do not require your emotional involvement. Many things resolve themselves when you step back. Many conflicts disappear when you choose not to feed them. Many people reveal their true character when you stop reacting to their provocations. Many misunderstandings fade when you choose patience over impulsiveness. Life becomes simpler, not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you interact with the world. When you observe instead of react, you naturally become more compassionate. You see the struggles hidden behind someone's anger. You see the fear behind someone's arrogance. You see the insecurity behind someone's criticism. You see the loneliness behind someone's silence. Compassion arises not from reacting to pain, but from observing it with understanding. And compassion strengthens your heart. It allows you to connect with others without absorbing their wounds. It allows you to forgive without forgetting your boundaries. It allows you to remain soft without becoming weak. This shift to observation is also how you awaken your higher self. The reactive self lives in survival mode. The observing self lives in awareness. The reactive self seeks control. The observing self seeks understanding. The reactive self is noisy, restless, easily triggered. The observing self is calm, grounded, and spiritually awake. When you observe your emotions instead of drowning in them, you separate yourself from them. You realize you are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your anxiety. You are the awareness quietly watching these emotions come and go. That awareness is your true self, unchanging, eternal, peaceful. As this awareness deepens, you begin to navigate life with a sense of freedom. You are no longer threatened by temporary emotions. You are no longer shaken by temporary circumstances. You are no longer imprisoned by your ego. You learn to move through challenges with grace. You learn to respond with clarity. You learn to protect your peace without creating conflict. You learn to walk away without drama. You learn to listen deeply without reacting impulsively. You learn to live fully without allowing external situations to drain your energy. And then, the most profound transformation occurs. The world no longer has the power to disturb you. Noise becomes background. Chaos becomes information. Negativity becomes a mirror. Life becomes a teacher. You become an observer, calm in the middle of storms, centered in the middle of uncertainty, unshakable in the middle of noise. This is the essence of Buddhist mastery. Freedom not from life, but freedom within life. Freedom not from problems, but from unnecessary suffering. Freedom not from emotion, but from emotional slavery. Your inner strength expands infinitely the moment you stop reacting and start observing, because observation reconnects you with your highest self, the version of you that sees clearly, acts wisely, and lives peacefully, regardless of what the world is doing. 13. Peace enters your life the moment you stop fighting what you cannot control. There is a quiet turning point in every person's life, when they finally understand that not every battle is worth fighting, not every situation is worth fixing, and not every outcome is meant to go their way. For years, the human mind clings to the illusion of control. It believes that if you push harder, argue more, worry deeper, or hold on tighter, somehow life will bend to your will. But Buddhism teaches one of the most liberating truths of all. Peace enters your life the moment you stop fighting what you cannot control. This is not resignation. This is not weakness. This is the highest form of wisdom and inner power. Most suffering does not come from life itself. It comes from resisting what life is trying to show you. It comes from trying to change people who do not want to change. It comes from holding on to situations long after your soul is asking you to let go. It comes from expecting life to unfold according to your personal timeline, your desires, your expectations, your fantasies. The harder you cling, the more life hurts. The more you resist, the heavier your spirit becomes. The more you try to force what is not meant for you, the deeper your suffering grows. And all of this happens because the mind is terrified of surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means giving space. It means allowing life to flow instead of grasping at it desperately. It means trusting that what is meant for you will stay, and what is not meant for you will leave, no matter how tightly you try to hold on to it. When you stop fighting the uncontrollable, you step out of the storm and into clarity. Your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes clearer. Your energy becomes free again. Consider how much time people waste resisting reality. They argue with the past, wishing things had turned out differently. They cling to relationships that drain them because they fear being alone. They stay in situations that suffocate them because they fear change. They replay conversations in their mind, trying to rewrite what was already said. They fight for closure from people who cannot give it. They wait for apologies that will never come. They hold on to pain because they believe suffering proves something to the world. But all this resistance does is create more internal chaos. Life moves forward while the mind stays stuck. When you stop fighting things you cannot control, you begin to see life as it truly is, not as you want it to be. You stop insisting that people should treat you differently and start recognizing who they actually are. You stop trying to force relationships to work and start understanding which ones were lessons, not destinies. You stop trying to control how others perceive you and start living according to your own integrity. You stop trying to hold on to moments that have already ended and start embracing the chapter unfolding before you. This acceptance does not weaken you, it frees you. Peace arrives the moment you understand that your job is not to control everything. Your job is to master yourself. You cannot control how people love, but you can control how you love yourself. You cannot control someone's honesty, but you can control your boundaries. You cannot control external events, but you can control your inner response. The moment this truth settles into your mind, a powerful shift begins. Your emotions no longer swing unpredictably. Your anxiety begins to dissolve. Your fear loses its grip. You begin to walk through life with a sense of groundedness that others can feel even in your silence. Letting go of control is not passive, it is deeply active. It requires awareness to distinguish between what you can change and what you must release. It requires emotional maturity to understand that not every loss is a failure. It requires inner strength to recognize when it is time to stop trying. It requires humility to accept that life knows more than your fear does, and it requires courage to trust that the unknown is not your enemy. Growth happens when you finally allow life to rearrange itself without your interference. A person who stops fighting the uncontrollable begins to experience life differently. They no longer chase answers, they allow clarity to come when it is ready. They no longer chase people, they allow relationships to unfold naturally. They no longer force timelines, they allow life to bring things when the soul is prepared. They no longer break when things fall apart. They understand that breaking is often the beginning of rebuilding. Their heart becomes spacious, their mind becomes gentle, their spirit becomes aligned with the rhythm of life, instead of resisting it at every step. Acceptance also brings strength, not the brittle strength of ego, but the soft strength of wisdom. You become someone who can endure storms without collapsing. You become someone who can face uncertainty without losing yourself. You become someone who can love deeply without clinging desperately. You become someone who can let go without breaking. You become someone who moves with life instead of constantly pushing against it. This is the essence of spiritual resilience. When you stop fighting what you cannot control, you reclaim energy that was once wasted on worry, fear, and emotional battles that had no purpose. You begin investing that energy in things that truly matter: your growth, your peace, your purpose, your healing, your future. You begin creating instead of reacting. You begin observing instead of forcing. You begin surrendering instead of resisting. Life suddenly feels lighter, not because the world changed, but because your relationship with it changed. And then a profound transformation occurs. Things begin to fall into place effortlessly. Opportunities appear naturally. Relationships become healthier. Your intuition grows stronger. Your decisions become wiser. Your path becomes clearer. You start attracting peace because you now live from peace. You start attracting clarity because your mind is no longer clouded by unnecessary struggle. You start attracting stability because you no longer try to control everything in fear of losing it. This is the quiet miracle of surrender. When you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. Peace does not come from controlling the world. Peace comes from releasing the need to control it. Peace begins the moment you say, "This I can change. This I cannot. I will not lose myself over what is beyond my power." And once you reach this level of understanding, you enter a state of inner freedom, free from resistance, free from attachment, free from suffering born from refusing reality. This freedom is the foundation of spiritual awakening. And once you taste it, you realize that nothing in the external world is worth losing your internal world over. You choose peace. You choose clarity. You choose surrender. And in doing so, you finally begin to live. 14. Your mind becomes light the moment you release the weight of overthinking. There is a quiet suffering that almost every human carries, often without realizing how destructive it is. It does not come from physical pain, heartbreak, or external hardship. It comes from the mind itself, specifically from the habit of overthinking. Overthinking is the silent storm that breaks the peace of millions of people every day. It is the inner noise that makes sleep difficult, decision-making exhausting, and life heavier than it needs to be. But Buddhism teaches a transformative truth. Your mind becomes light the moment you release the weight of overthinking. This release is not a skill, it is a liberation. Overthinking creates a false world, a world made entirely from imagination, fear, memory, and projection. The mind becomes stuck between "what if" and "why not?" It creates problems that don't exist. It magnifies small situations into emotional disasters. It replays old moments until the past becomes heavier than the present. It rushes far into the future until the unknown becomes scarier than it actually is. Every thought becomes a thread that pulls you deeper into anxiety, deeper into confusion, and deeper into emotional exhaustion. Overthinking turns the mind into a battlefield where you lose peace even when there is no real enemy. Buddhism has long taught that suffering does not come from events, but from how the mind interprets them. Overthinking is the clearest example of this truth. It takes a moment that could have been handled calmly and turns it into a storm of unnecessary emotion. It takes a conversation that meant nothing and twists it into a story of rejection or conflict. It takes uncertainty and transforms it into fear. It takes silence from others and interprets it as something wrong about you. The mind becomes its own tormentor, creating suffering from shadows. But here is the deeper truth. Overthinking is not a sign of intelligence. It is a sign of disconnection from the present moment. When the mind cannot rest in now, it travels into the past or future compulsively. It tries to solve situations that are not happening. It tries to control outcomes that are not yet real. It tries to fix problems that exist only in imagination. The more you overthink, the further you drift away from reality. And the further you drift from reality, the more unstable your emotional life becomes. Freedom from overthinking begins with awareness, not forcing the mind to be quiet, not suppressing thoughts, not fighting your own mind, but simply observing the mind with gentleness. When you begin observing your thoughts instead of identifying with them, something profound happens. You realize that you are not your thoughts. Thoughts come and go like clouds, but your awareness, the sky behind the clouds, remains untouched. This realization loosens the grip that thoughts have on your emotions. You see that not every thought is truth. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every thought requires analysis. Some thoughts are just noise passing through the mind. As awareness deepens, acceptance follows. You stop trying to force certainty where certainty does not exist. You stop demanding answers to every question your mind invents. You stop trying to control the future with mental rehearsing. You stop fighting old memories that cannot be changed. You begin to accept that life cannot be perfectly predicted, perfectly controlled, or perfectly understood. Acceptance is not giving up. It is putting down the unnecessary weight your mind has been carrying. One of the most powerful Buddhist teachings says, "If the problem can be solved, there is no need to worry. If the problem cannot be solved, worrying will not help." Overthinking adds suffering to situations that are already challenging, and it invents suffering for situations that are not. The moment you release the need to mentally control everything, your mind becomes lighter. The storm fades, the mental fog clears, silence returns. When you stop overthinking, you become more present. You begin to feel life again instead of analyzing it. You taste your food instead of eating distracted. You listen to others instead of rehearsing responses in your mind. You enjoy quiet moments instead of filling them with mental noise. You sleep peacefully instead of arguing with imaginary scenarios. You experience joy in simple things because your mind is no longer tangled in unnecessary complications. Your relationships improve as well. Overthinking creates misunderstandings that never existed. It makes you assume instead of communicate. It makes you fear abandonment where there is none. It makes you overreact to tone, silence, or small changes in behavior. But when your mind becomes still, you see others more clearly, without the distortions of fear or insecurity. You communicate with calmness. You trust more deeply. You love more peacefully. You stop creating emotional storms inside yourself because you stop believing every thought that appears. Releasing overthinking also builds inner strength. When the mind quiets, intuition grows sharper. You begin to recognize your true feelings without confusion. You sense what is right for you without needing endless analysis. You make decisions quicker and with more confidence. You stop waiting for absolute certainty before taking action. You stop delaying your life because your mind is stuck in loops. You start moving forward, step by step, in clarity. This forward movement builds resilience, self-trust, and emotional stability. Overthinking often comes from attachment to outcomes, to expectations, to fears, to control. When you release these attachments, the mind naturally softens. You begin to understand that the future will unfold in its own timing, regardless of how much you worry about it. You understand that people will act according to their nature, regardless of your assumptions about them. You understand that life cannot always be planned, it must be lived. This understanding invites profound peace into your life, and then the transformation becomes undeniable. Your mind becomes light, not empty light, clear, spacious, flexible, still. A mind free from the weight of overthinking becomes a mind capable of deep peace. It becomes a mind that responds wisely instead of reacting impulsively. It becomes a mind that sees situations as they are, not as fear paints them. It becomes a mind that moves with life instead of resisting it. When your mind becomes light, your life becomes light. Suddenly, challenges feel manageable, decisions feel easier, conversations feel clearer, relationships feel safer, silence feels comforting, loneliness feels healing, life feels meaningful. Nothing outward has changed, but everything inward has transformed. This is the promise of Buddhist wisdom. The mind becomes your greatest ally the moment you stop letting it become your greatest enemy. Overthinking is just a habit. Awareness breaks the habit. Acceptance heals the habit. Presence replaces the habit. And peace becomes the new default. Your mind was never meant to be a battlefield. It was meant to be a sanctuary. And the moment you release the weight of overthinking, you rediscover that sanctuary calm, spacious, serene, untouched by fear. This is where true inner freedom begins. 15. Your life elevates the moment. You release the need to be understood. One of the deepest sources of human suffering comes from a quiet, persistent desire that most people never question, the desire to be understood. We want people to understand our intentions, our choices, our dreams, our hearts, our pain, our boundaries, and our silence. We want them to see who we truly are, to interpret our actions correctly, and to validate the meaning behind our behavior. And yet, the more we try to make people understand us, the more misunderstood we often feel. This creates a cycle of emotional exhaustion and spiritual frustration. But Buddhism teaches a transformative truth. Your life elevates the moment you release the need to be understood. Understanding is a beautiful experience, but it is not a guarantee. People do not see you as you are. They see you as they are. Their perception is shaped by their wounds, their insecurities, their beliefs, their upbringing, their traumas, and their emotional capacity. You can speak the truth gently, clearly, and honestly, and someone rooted in fear will still hear threat. You can act with love, and someone rooted in insecurity will still feel abandoned. You can set a boundary, and someone rooted in control will still feel attacked. You can choose silence, and someone rooted in chaos will still see rejection. What people understand about you has more to do with their inner world than your outer behavior. And this is why explaining yourself again and again does not lead to clarity. It leads to deeper frustration. You try to justify your choices, but they look through the lens of their expectations. You try to communicate your intentions, but they hear through the filter of their fears. You try to express your truth, but they interpret it based on their own stories. You exhaust yourself trying to correct perceptions that were never yours to control. This effort drains your energy, weakens your spirit, and distracts you from your purpose. But the moment you release the need to be understood, something powerful happens inside you. A heavy weight lifts, a silence settles into your heart. You stop fighting invisible battles. You stop correcting narratives that people create. You stop justifying your boundaries, your growth, your peace, your healing, or your journey. You allow others to misunderstand you because you finally understand yourself. This shift is not coldness, it is maturity. It is spiritual elevation. It is freedom from emotional dependence. Releasing the need to be understood does not mean you avoid communication. It means you communicate clearly, but without attachment to how others receive it. You express yourself honestly, but without forcing someone to see the world through your eyes. You listen deeply, but without trying to change someone's perspective. You begin to understand that your truth does not require agreement to remain true. Your values do not require applause to remain valid. Your boundaries do not require approval to remain necessary. Your decisions do not require justification to remain right for your soul. This acceptance creates a profound internal shift. Instead of seeking external validation, you turn inward. You strengthen your relationship with yourself. You learn to stand confidently in your choices. You learn to honor your emotions without needing permission. You learn to trust your intuition, even when others question it. You learn to respect your boundaries, even when others misunderstand them. And you learn to walk your path, even when others do not see the vision you see. When you no longer need to be understood, you stop over-explaining, oversharing, and over-giving. You conserve your energy. You protect your spiritual space. You remove yourself from unnecessary arguments. You stop participating in emotional conflicts designed to pull you away from your peace. You stop giving your power to people who cannot hold it with respect. You begin to live quietly, intentionally, and authentically. And ironically, the less you need to be understood, the more peace you begin to experience. The relationships that are meant for you will not require constant explanation. They will understand your silence, your boundaries, your changes, your growth, and your intentions without you having to translate your heart into a language they can accept. True connection does not demand justification. It exists naturally, peacefully, and without pressure. When you stop demanding understanding from people who cannot give it, you make space for relationships that offer understanding without effort. This freedom also deepens your emotional resilience. You no longer crumble when someone misinterprets your actions. You no longer feel broken when someone sees you incorrectly. You no longer feel pressured to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's narrative. You stop trying to manage other people's perceptions. Instead, you focus on managing your inner state. You focus on your clarity, your alignment, your peace, your growth, and your purpose. And these things elevate your life more than any external validation ever could. When you release the need to be understood, you begin to walk a path guided by your soul, not by society. You live by internal truth, not external approval. You rise above emotional chaos. You develop a calm confidence that radiates without speaking. You gain a sense of independence that others can feel, even in your silence. You become someone who is not easily shaken, not easily manipulated, and not easily discouraged because you no longer look outward for reassurance. You look inward where your real power lives. And then something extraordinary happens. The world begins to respond differently to you. People sense your strength. They sense your clarity. They sense your calm. They sense your ability to walk alone. They sense that you do not need their approval, and this subtly changes how they treat you. The more you rely on yourself emotionally, the more respect you naturally attract. The less you need to be understood, the more you become a mystery, a quiet force that does not bend to external judgment. This is spiritual elevation. This is inner sovereignty. The truth is simple but life-changing. The need to be understood is a form of attachment, and attachment always creates suffering. When you detach from the desire to be understood, you detach from suffering. You detach from ego. You detach from fear. You detach from emotional dependence. And in this detachment, you rise, you grow, you transform, you evolve. Your life elevates the moment you stop demanding others to understand your journey. Because the journey was never theirs to understand, it was always yours to walk. When you look back at your journey, the noise, the battles, The distractions, the fears, the expectations, the misunderstandings, the overthinking, the attachments, you begin to see that every challenge was pointing you toward one simple truth. You were never meant to find yourself in the outside world. You were meant to find yourself in silence. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not loneliness. Silence is the space where your soul finally becomes louder than the noise of the world. It is where clarity replaces confusion, where wisdom replaces reaction, where acceptance replaces resistance, and where inner strength replaces emotional instability. Every lesson you have learned cuts through distractions, calms your storms, resets your mind, protects your peace, strengthens your boundaries, awakens your intuition, and teaches you the sacred art of walking alone without feeling alone. Rebuilding yourself does not happen in chaos. It happens in the quiet moments when you decide to stop chasing the world and start returning to yourself. It happens when you realize that peace is not something you find by controlling everything around you. It is something you create by mastering everything within you. The world will always be loud. People will always misunderstand. Life will always be unpredictable. But none of these things have the power to break you once you have learned how to rise in silence. Because silence is not the absence of power. Silence is the birthplace of power. When you let go of what you cannot control, the weight on your spirit begins to lift. When you stop explaining yourself, your energy returns to your own hands. When you stop reacting, your emotions fall back under your command. When you stop needing others, you discover the strength that was always inside you. When you stop overthinking, your mind becomes light again. When you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. Every step toward silence is a step toward freedom. Every distraction you cut is a chain removed from your soul. Every moment you choose inner peace over external noise is a moment you move closer to your highest self. And the most beautiful part, you do not rise loudly. You do not rise dramatically. You rise quietly, naturally, peacefully, like the sun rising after a long night. No announcements, no approval, no validation. Just growth, silent, steady, unshakable. This is the true path of transformation. This is the Buddhist path. This is your path now. So walk gently, walk wisely, walk inward, and above all, walk in silence. Because silence is where your rebirth begins. Silence is where you become who you were always meant to be. Silence is where the strongest version of you awakens, calm, conscious, and completely in control of your own destiny. And when you rebuild yourself from silence, you do not just survive life, you master it.